Sloane Ford has very long, very beautiful hair, the colour of chestnuts, an improbably warm tone of brown, but she doesn't dye it. She's thin and in her early 40s, but her face is like a sorority girl's. It has that look of making out. She goes to the gym more often than she eats lunch with other mothers. She both does and doesn't look like a woman people gossip about. She appears genuine, if sly, and says things like, "I am intrigued by the politics of service." She means the way a dining experience is a microcosm for the dynamics of familiars and strangers coming together under conditions in which one side of the encounter is somewhat indentured to the other, at least for the course of several hours. She gives the impression of not knowing she's being looked at. In certain light, she can appear so self-assured that it can be frightening, and one might be very aware of setting her off. At other times, she's very giving, so as to appear almost small, so that friends might endeavour never to upset her. The confluence of both is striking and has the result of drawing one to her. Sloane is married to a man named Richard, who is not as handsome as she is beautiful. They have 2 daughters, equine and vibrant like their mother, and a 3rd child, Leela, Richard's daughter from his first relationship. As a family, they are bound very neatly, and yet there is also a porousness, the sort of friendly distance that enables each member of the family to be his or her own person. They live in Newport on Rhode Island's Narragansett Bay, where great Georgian houses line the rocky coast, on a crowded but lovely street where summer people buy bluefish pate in cars and lobster from the fish market. Richard and Sloane own a restaurant a few blocks inland from the boats that knock quietly in the harbour. He's the chef, and she's the front of the house. She's perfect for the position, the sort of woman who can wear ankle-length dresses and not get lost in them. Their summer is busy, as it is for everyone on the island. Summer is the time to make all the money they can because the colder months are seedless. In January and February, the residents must batten down their hatches, stay inside with their family and their earnings, eating the kale pesto that they have preserved. During the colder months, the residents are also better able to concentrate on the children, their routines, school and recitals and sports. But Sloane is a woman who doesn't talk about her children, or at least not in the same way as some other women whose lives revolve around tiny schedules. When Sloane is not around, people talk about her. In a small town, it would be enough that she goes to the gym more than she stops to talk by the bags of baby greens. But that isn't the reason why people talk. The salient bit, the gossip, is that Sloane sleeps with other men in front of her husband. Or she does it down the street or on another island and records it and shows her husband the video later. If she isn't with him, she texts him throughout to let him know how it's going. Occasionally, she'll sleep with another couple. Hers is a trajectory that is not immediately tenable. She's living in this space year-round, which is strange in itself. Families like hers come for 2-week stints in the summer. Occasionally they will spend the entire summer, or the mother will, and the father will come on the weekends. But to be here full time in the winter, one can go crazy. There are no malls, no large stores to get lost in. When you leave for the day, you make a list of all the errands you need to run out in the world. The road to her adult life began with a Christmas party at the home of her father's boss, one of the richest men in New York City. The house in the Westchester suburbs had columns and Persian rugs and gold-edged crystal, women with low heels. Outside, the tree branches were swollen with ice. The streets shone. Sloane was her father's date, and her date was a boy named Bobby. He was good-looking, like all the boys she dated. Sloane was 22 and taking a break from the restaurant business. She wanted to explore theatre. She was going out almost every night, and her social calendar was full with a range of events, from warm beer and dank music venues to chilled martinis in homes like this one. Her father's boss's wife, prim, silver woman named Selma, said, "We should get Keith and Sloane together." She said this somewhat in front of Sloane's date, Bobby. It was like an epiphany. Keith, their son, and Sloane, their right-hand man's daughter, beautiful, well-bred, thin, deific, and like two horses ready to reproduce. They lived 2 blocks from each other. How had they not thought of this before? Sloane wasn't so interested in money, but all the same, this young man, Keith, had a lot of it. His family name was at the top of most of the programs in the art world. A few weeks later, Sloane went out with Keith. She was happy to do it for her father. That her sexual energy was somehow usable in his business made her feel powerful. Keith asked her where she wanted to go for their date, and Sloane said, Vong. The next place she wanted to go was always on the tip of her tongue. That's funny, Keith said. My best friend is a manager there. Sloane wore an olive turtleneck, velvety cigarette pants, and a pair of boots. They were seated at the best table, a banquet in an alcove. It sat 6, but that night it was reserved for just 2 of them. Sloane was used to being a special guest. She had on small earrings. The restaurant was buzzing with the energy of being the spot of the moment. Servers were walking quickly, seamlessly weaving around one another like half of them were ghosts. Plates were artful, white and grey rectangles of fish cresting atop pyramids of vegetables glazed in something slick and sweet and tanned. The smell of acid and heat, radiators warm with sparing no expense. The manager, Keith's best friend, came by to let them know the chef would be sending out a special tasting menu. Before dinner, Keith and Sloane had smoked weed. Sloane always did the perfect amount of any drug. Sometimes the perfect amount meant overdoing it. And so that was what she'd do. Alcohol, for example. Sometimes she knew it was appropriate to be a little too drunk. 5 courses were sent out, each more interesting than the last. But it was the final one before dessert that impressed Sloane the most. A whole black sea bass with Chinese long beans in a viscous black bean sauce. She kept saying to Keith, "This is fucking amazing." And Keith would smile and alternately gaze at her and the servers going by. He seemed amused by the rapid flow of the world. Sloane knew that inside the mind of boys like these was the casual appreciation of another nice dinner out with another pretty girl. One day he would have a billiards table in a downstairs room, cigar smoke, and sons. This sea bass would become halibut or seared tuna. Sloane become Christina or Caitlin. But Sloane, in that moment, in most moments, was not like the water that waved around her. "This sea bass," she said, touching Keith's wrist. "This fucking fish!" There was something about food. There always had been. That connected Sloane to a different world. One where she didn't have to be pretty and poised. A world where juices could run down her chin.